In this video, I'm going to be reading to you from a 2006 article that I wrote, but I'm also going to be commenting quite a bit throughout. The subject of the Lotus Loci is fascinating, but it's very unique, and there needs to be a backstory to it. So let us begin. Thoth calls the first stage of the New Earth star numism. This first stage can appear very similar to our current Earth environment. There are major differences. Things can change in the blink of an eye. Different souls may see different things in the same space. The colors are more intense, and everything seems so much more alive with spirit. But there are grass, trees, flowers, etc., and for those who wish to see them and wish to experience close contact with others, buildings, and homes as well. Yet there are also other zones within numism that are not so familiar to our current world. The most exotic of these is what Thoth calls the haspara, which translates to the edge or fine point. In the haspara, life resembles the early lotus reality of Earth before it merged with the more physical evolutionary matter planet, although there are differences. For it is a new Earth that is being created here, and not a return to the ancient one. As in the ancient Earth, haspara is a creational zone for new species of flora and fauna. But it is more than that. These new life forms are creation builders in themselves, in that their very existence is so transformative that they radiate out into the whole of the New Earth matrix and into the full spectrum of numism. This radiation is illuminating in scope. As a result, numism inhabitants and visitors, old Earth souls visiting in dream time or other altered states, are experiencing radiant evolution within their DNA. So let's just pause a moment and digest that. In other words, if you have a dreamtime experience in the New Earth, or some other kind of altered state, where you're in meditation, deep meditation, or whatever, and you experience it, you are actually positively affecting your DNA. You are bringing forth a creative expression in crystalline structure of the DNA to enliven and further develop the pure gem state in your body. To continue, the creational life forms of haspara are not a finished product. Well, no aspect of life ever is, but their transmutations are constant. These loci, a focus of intent, are sentient, and yet the higher forms contain encoded God commands that ordain high degrees of pure source radiance streaming into the entire New Earth star grid. By seeing some of these beings, touching them in spirit, we here in the old Earth can quicken not only our ascension codes, but those of the entire old Earth domain. Since the Lotus Loci are constantly in the process of mutation themselves, it is difficult for me to classify them, but with Thoth's help, I've managed to divide them into the following categories, ordered from the highest in spirit presence to the lowest. Understand that these life forms are morphing through a specific sequence of evolution. I use this word loosely, as Thoth has told me that in the larger picture there is no such thing as evolution, but within our parameters of consciousness it is perceivable as such, so that is what we shall call it. He often refers to evolution, but always with that caveat. Thus, there is no precise dividing line, where for instance an L becomes a gatekeeper. Yet for the purposes of my Lotus Loci presentation, I have placed them where they are most suited. The Lotus Loci often make appearances outside of the haspara zone, or maybe you could say they take it with them, In any case, in numism, one could be walking or floating through a forest of redwood trees and suddenly see one of these luminous forms before them. This is kind of a bleed-through between zones in numism. Like Wonderland, nothing in numism stays the way you think it should. What does all this have to do with us, here and now? These Lotus Loci are living, evolving nutrients, building blocks of where we are going. Ingesting them visually, energetically, prepares our DNA for transition into the new Earth star. And in the more immediate sense, it is a viable balancing and healing experience for our energy bodies to take them in and let them flow through our meridians. They not only exist in numism, but on the micro level in our current old Earth bodies. As they evolve on numism, so they appear on the micro level in our current world matter. As they grow stronger, we and our Earth become more wedded to them. As we become more heart coherent, so they grow stronger. The driving force of the Lotus Loci nutrients, that are also the new life forms of numism, is the unified field, or more aptly, the morphogenetic field. The two are not the same, but morphogenetic fields nest inside the unified field. The unified field holds the entire being as a seamless flow. The morphogenetic fields are like distinct crucibles of unified being within the greater unified field. The morphogenetic fields translate the being into developmental association, which we might call the turnkey of evolution. Again, evolution being only a means for us to understand an aspect of universal process. So these nutrients that are in us and in numism of the new Earth star are constantly in a morphing state, creating through the electrical synapses of our nervous system pathways for new System 2 worlds to form. According to Dr. John Hagelin, a quantum physicist scientist, you access the unified field, quote, by using the human nervous system, by inwardly directing the mind so that it identifies itself with the unified field, end of quotes. That's close, but according to Thoth, not quite to the point. Thoth shows me how the nervous system is the key to the brain's identification with reality, what it considers real in and around it. Notice I say brain and not mind, for the mind simply uses the brain as a tool for a tiny bit of its purpose. However, what I am calling the Lotus Loci nutrients use the nervous system like a petri dish to germinate their light-encoded bodies. When we feed our nervous systems with the pure light of love, so the loci nutrients bloom and develop our whole human systems to greater awareness and capacity. Before we continue to the identification of categories of the Lotus Loci and the images I have recently created through my AI art capabilities, I wish to share with you some of the process. First of all, I did have images previously in 2007, which I created in a fractal software, and they're certainly adequate, but of course I wanted to bring them forward more, because these are frequencies that are spinning and turning and evolving, to use that word, and moving, and so they can be seen from different angles, different ways, and there's so many of them. It's like, are they infinite? I'm not exactly sure, but they just keep going because they are constantly in process. So there's new art to accompany this. And I felt very connected to bringing through these images. However, when I approached the latter part, which I'm not addressing in the original article, but there is a developmental stage it moves through where it reveals a human-looking being. And that human-looking part of the Lotus Loci can communicate and move and be seen and then move back into its formless form. Sort of not formless, but, in more of a mandala-like pattern. So I tried doing that, getting these human expressions, these human images. I feel that I have metaphorically, artistically captured the essence, the vibration of them. So now let us take a deeper dive. The L. These beings appear as radiant flashes in auric envelopes of light. These flashes are determined by the movement of the electromagnetic cycles in the planet. While the new Earth star numism is not as physical as is our old Earth, according to Thoth, there is no real cutoff between spirit and matter. There is simply finer matter or denser spirit, whichever way you wish to view it, but Thoth prefers spirit all the way. Thus, the evolving electromagnetic field of the new Earth star is far more subtle and with different parameters of universal law supporting it, but it does exist. The L move along the convoluting currents of radiant light as they strike the shore of the electromagnetic field of numism. In the haspara level, this field is demonstrated in stronger peaks and valleys, less what we would call stable, for it is at the edge of the evolving new Earth that the tendrils of the planet's energy are reaching out through the peaking energy to create new territory. The L supply the mana, or life force, for the entire new Earth and its forming terraplanes. Gazing upon an L, or an image of one, the individual soul may experience that resonant wave of light rise up in them, the peak of their own edge in a light-bearing being. Gatekeepers. Gatekeepers are the guards of the realm. They keep in balance the delicate flow of energies and see to it that invasive or discordant radioactivity is kept to a minimum. As radiant light strikes the waves of the electromagnetic field, certain chaotic spillovers occur. The gatekeepers gather it up and digest it into more subtle, coherent energy. Souls looking upon or viewing images of the gatekeepers are given a path into becoming more coherent with their own energy field. Light plasmas. These are the collectors of the radiant light pulsed into the electromagnetic waves by the L. The light plasmas feed off that moment of contact and form themselves as cells of very specific properties, utilizing the radiant light to create the codes and paths of the planetary schematic condition. They move through the vaporous ethers of the haspara zone, streaming the shimmering light-charged particles of vapor through their amorphous forms. Light plasmas are kind of like blood banks in that the flora and fauna of the realm can draw sustenance of specific light molecules from these plasmas. Souls looking upon or viewing images of the light plasmas may experience infusions of similar energies as well. Air sylphs. These are creatures of the ether air. They capture stray particles on their feathers and transmute them into coherent patterns to then be utilized by the crystallines. The air sylphs are also very attuned to the music of the spheres, the constant harmonics of the universe, and beauteous song can be often heard emitted from their forms. They have no mouths or vocal cords, but their whole being can quiver with the harmonies, and then the vibrating feathers sing as they shiver against one another. Souls looking upon or viewing images of the air sylphs or hearing their marvelous tones may feel ecstatic and full of healing light and joy, creating a true sense of oneness with the universe. Crystallines. These crystal beings are the first level of elementals in the haspara, and thus in the new earth numism. They are the purest template for all the elemental building blocks of the new Earth star. They are to be found in water and on the ground, not usually singly, but rather fitting together in the appearance of an ice palace. In my depiction of them, however, you will see them singly presented. They are very collective in their strong morphogenetic field and often respond in unison. Souls looking upon or viewing images of the crystallines may tap and commune with the God seed of all crystalline structures in the old and the new earth. Sea foams. The denser vapors of the haspara form pools, lakes, and seas. The sea foams dwell in these waters, either riding just above them, trailing tendrils or parts of their form in the liquid solution, or moving beneath the surface. The sea foams open the energy current of all liquid substance in the new Earth system. They keep it pure and revitalized. They also seed it with nutrition for those who would partake of its nourishment, not in drinking it, but absorbing it directly into their forms. Souls looking upon or viewing images of the sea foams may experience a cleansing of the liquids in their body. Terraforms. These are the mammals of the New Earth design. They contain all the genetic material necessary to build the new life forms the souls of the New Earth will eventually inhabit. We will not look like them. They are simply generators of the DNA starter kit. The human form as we know it is very much along the same symmetry as future human structure. There will be differences, of course, but even to our current view of beauty, we would respond in awe and wonder to these future pure gem bodies. In the meantime, the terraforms do their job of generating the proper codes and keeping them fertile for the future age. These codes are not only for humans, but other species as well. In the future New Earth, beyond numism, the lines will not be so specifically drawn between human and animal, for the DNA will develop into a much less species-specific content. I wish to conclude this video by speaking about the crystalline loci forming in the blood, the live blood of the human being. In around 2014, I believe, my dear colleague and friend, William Bueller, who has since transitioned, had his blood work done, his live blood work, by a ND who has many credentials to his name. The ND stated to Bill that he'd never seen anything like what he saw in the live blood specimen except for one other time. And these were these crystalline forms. Bill sent me some photographs of these images, these crystallines. And I went to Thoth about it, and he said that these were budding Lotus Loci in the form that they were able to enter into the bloodstream. Thoth further related to me that this would increase through humanity. More and more people would be receiving, creating these Lotus Loci forms in the blood. Now, they are always in the crystalline DNA frequency of the quantum field. But they are now, only now, beginning to enter into the bloodstream. After he told me this, several years passed, and more people were experiencing these forms in the blood from the test that this particular ND was giving. Because Bill was going to him repeatedly, he kept up on this, and the ND would say, yeah, more and more people, I'm getting more blood samples. Somehow he's able to do this long distance. That is, they send him blood in, packages. I don't know how this is done, because you would think the blood would go bad, but apparently there's a way to do it. And he receives blood samples from all over the world. He's quite out there, he has a lot of clientele. And so the ND was just absolutely amazed at how it just started, with Bill and this one other person, and then all of a sudden he was getting more and more of these blood samples that contained these unique crystalline entities, you might say. When I moved back to Crestone in 2017, this was where Bill was living, I went to the ND as well, and my blood samples showed these crystalline entities in it. So this is perpetuating and moving further and further into the human experience now. And it is the basic building blocks to create the pure gem body. I'm including a link to a very short video I made a few years ago that has just a little more information on all of this. So I will place this in the information box below.